Well, since you brought it up, we'll go ahead and pivot toward the gorilla in your room that seems to cause so many complications come ADCC time. Let's talk about invites. So we have a basic criteria that you offer,
Yes.
winning the trials, blah, 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 and all the other things that incorporate that. Tell me some things that you consider to be intangibles to when you're really sitting down and deciding, because there's a list of things, but lots of people kind of fit that criteria. Yeah. Tell me about what you really look at when you're talking.
Well, let me give you the process the way I look at it. So first of all, there's 16. Let's just take the men's division. There's 16 men in each division. There's 8 trials, so that takes away 8. So there's only 8 spots left. Generally, what I like to do is invite the previous 4 medalists from the next ADCC. So that means I only have 4 invites. So I have the 8 from the trials and the previous 4. So it just depends who wants to come in. For example, like, I'm not going to name names, but the 77 and 99 minus 99 kilogram division for next ADCC is already full. Like, there's just so many high level people that want to go into it. And for example, like Davi Ramos messaged me, he wants to come back. He's an ex-champion. So, when an ex-champion wants to come back, like I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get him in. So it just depends on space. For example, like the heavyweight division next year, I think is gonna be quite a bit of vacancies because I don't think Gushesha will be back unless he does like a super fight. I saw publicly Yuri wants to go back down to minus 99. And it depends on the division, to be honest.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about what you consider. So like, and I mean it in this way, like before we had this massive explosion of professional jiu-jitsu, you have your pick of the litter of generally, guys that are massively on the scene in jiu-jitsu versus guys that maybe might be a little more technically savvy, but don't have the acumen or the public eye.
You've hit the nail on the head. So that's the hardest part, right?
Right.
You got to balance, the technique of the competitor and also like, what he brings to the table. But so it's just really hard. I just do it case by case, who deserves to be there. And then will I throw in someone that's a big name that people want to see? Yeah, it's still an entertainment thing, but I just try to make it as fair as possible. When it comes to invites and the brackets, I can always justify any of them. So
do you have any problem? I mean, obviously you do, but tell me a little bit how you, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but because again, we're in a different world now. Like the idea of the ADCC before, you invited the ex-champions and like there was a very small pocket of people that could viably be ADCC competitors. But now in the world we're living in, like, how do you balance the idea of making the event entertaining and catering to the public versus continuing to uphold the integrity of what you believe the ADCC entails? Because in my opinion, I still don't think there's another event that is integrity it has as much clout as the ADCC. It's the prestige of them all. Like how do you weigh those two balances?
I think a big factor, for example, like the trials have been delayed. I mean, I'm sure you've read that, the North American trials. So I had an option of just proceed to do the Worlds and cut some trials and whatever, and I just didn't want to do that. I'd rather delay the event because the thing I think that makes ADCC different than other organizations, anyone that's there deserves to be there, whether they're an ex-champion, an ex-medalist, they won the trials, and that's what builds up to the event. So, once these trials start firing off, early next year, hopefully, you're going to see these people coming up. And what makes ADCC interesting is there's always a breakout performance. So, for example, 2017, Craig Jones comes out, taps out Leandro. Everyone's like, okay, that's pretty interesting. Then he comes in, taps out Murillo. You know what I'm saying? So he had a pretty good breakout performance, and he went and did like 150 seminars that year.
So running joke, he's literally on every event. Every time you look at an event, there's Craig Jones again.
And because I'm good friends with Craig, and I always make fun of him. I'm like, I'm not gonna lie to you. You were literally my 15th, or like you were the last place from like number 15 seed in 2017. Because 2015 came, Hamo just destroyed him. So that's the point. You can change a lot in 2 years. And then obviously last year was the Lachlan story. He came out and
giant killer.
He got, and I was the one that convinced him. I'm like, just go out and do it, man. And I'm like, if you do it, you have a higher chance of getting an invite. So he was sold on that. And he went and got bronze in the absolute.
So let's talk. Let's talk about. We've talked about who gets the invites, and we've talked about what you do to make sure that people get they're supposed to be there, get there,
I just
and
want to say
also.
one more thing
Right, go,
about the
sorry, go
invites,
ahead. Yeah,
because I get this a lot, right? ADCC is completely different than any other rule set. Like I'll have people message you like, "I'm the no-gi IBJJF world champion." I'm like, "That's great. This is different,"
yeah,
because the physicality, the physicality of ADCC is much higher than any other show. You can see it in the fights, and the level of competition too. So, and I've seen no-gi world champions go and do the trials and get submitted in the first and second round. Just and then add in the heel hooks, the wrestling. So for me, that's why we put a heavy emphasis on the trials. If you can do well at the trials, we know you can hang at the world championship.
yeah.
So
The idea of points being at such a high premium in the ADCC is what I believe makes it so amazing. The idea, like when you score the ADCC, man, you
you
did
hit it.
something. No, you did something. When you hold somebody down for a takedown, or you sweep somebody, you pass somebody's guard, and you hold them for that hard 3 count, man, like
You
you
are
earned those points.
100% right. Because
Right.
this goes back to, I'm going to get into something else. So it's impossible to score in ADCs. It's
Yeah.
so hard to score, because of the criteria. One continuous motion. Did you do it in under 3 seconds? So that's why in the judging criteria, the number one criteria, it's not sub attempts, it's who is the aggressor. And the reason is if it's that hard to score, we have to incentivize you to push the pace. Otherwise, everyone's just going to sit there and, hand fight or whatever. So we need to incentivize you to go out there and push the action. And I think I saw Hanato Kanuto after. He's just like, he's like, holy crap, these fights are grueling. So it's a big stage, the level. So everyone just brings it. And I say people are like, what's the difference between ACC and other shows? I'm like, the performances. Everyone fights 110%. They want to win it so bad because if you win an ADCC title, it can change your life.
Well, even so much of that, man. When you talk about prestige again, like I always say this: you can't say you're a world champion until you win the IBJJF. There's just that granddaddy kind of thing about winning the IBJJF Worlds, but the fighters want to win the ADCC. There's nothing like the guys that are in the know. Even if you just win the trials, you're in an elite level of grappler, even higher than the IBJJF World Championship. I think the IBJJF, you could be strategic. You can learn to play those games and kind of manipulate your game. It's still difficult, but you can learn to win at IBJJF. There's no learning to win at
Well,
ADCC.
I think that's like a great example of how prestigious the ADCCs are, is that oftentimes individual matches happening during the tournament will be so spectacular that they overshadow like medal finishes. Like there could be matches individually that are so spectacular in the moment that they're just like, oh my God, this is the thing we're focusing on.
I mean, just look at the first round last year. Like we had Nicky Rod and Muhammad Ali in the first round. Like these are like every fight is a super fight. I remember on the Sunday, on the 3 mats, you had Nicky Rod and Cyborg, you had Gordon and Hulk, and then you had Kainan and Bushesha all at the same time. That's insane. Any one of those fights is a super fight. And you have 3 super fights going at the same time. So it's just really
I
really
think that
remarkable.
Often people will go right back to the Eddie Bravo example, but those are just a handful of examples that are just like
I always talk about that, So Eddie Bravo submitted Hoyler in 2003, who was a champion, and he just obviously exploded after that. The funny thing is, he fought Leo Vieira, and he lost pretty badly, like 20-something-0, but no one cares,
Right.
Craig submitted Leandro and Murillo, and then Keenan beat him pretty bad, and Gordon did too, but no one cares. So if you can have like one breakout performance, that's great. Like even Lachlan, I'm not trying to diss him or anything. I just speaking the facts. He hasn't won once yet in his division, but then he goes and does the absolute and gets bronze, takes out 3 guys. So no one cares that he lost in the first round.
He looked so happy on that podium.
Gary Tonin Canuto is another perfect example. I mean, I think if I had to pick the greatest match of the last ADCC, it's Gary Tonin freaking Canuto. Like I couldn't think of a more amazing match.
We gave that the best match. That was easy. I mean, that was amazing. And they even have like a submission. It's just these guys just went 15 minutes, going all out. So, at the end of the day, it's the competitors that make it special. We had a lot of cool storylines, like Gordon getting double gold with 75% submission rate. So a lot of cool things happen, and every ADCC something spectacular happens.
I would love to very briefly just because we've had submission underground matchmaker Heather Standing on here, and she's given us a lot of insight as to what it's like to be the person making these matches happen and these events happen. And when you go back in time looking at boxing and like back in the heyday before social media, all of these decisions would be made set in stone, and people wouldn't really have an ability to comment on them and voice their approval or displeasure. But now with social media being what it is, every decision is put under this microscope. Yeah. So if you could, like, when you're sitting down and you're mapping out this very prestigious event, how much of that pressure gets to you? Like, are you able to just shut it all out?
It doesn't mean anything to me. I'll be honest with you. Like, when it comes to no one can really influence me. I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I have to make things fair for everybody. So, I'll take suggestions from people, no problem. One thing I'm open to is taking suggestions from everybody. I think that's the best way to grow. I'm not one of those people like, no, it's my way or the highway, but no one's going to influence me and make me believe something I don't believe, So, I get into arguments all the time with people and about the brackets or the invites. And I'm probably batting almost 100% in those debates. So once I explain everything, they're just like, okay, they get it.
Yeah, and it's they're not the one with their name on the line here. I mean, I will take your input, and we can discuss what your opinions are, and I'd be more than happy to hear your input on and your your thoughts.
To be honest, like, a lot of people in jiu-jitsu are biased too. People are going to look out for their teammates. They're going to look out for their team. I don't. And I think that's a big problem with jiu-jitsu is people look for themselves a lot, and me, I'm just always thinking big picture. Everything to me is big picture. I want to push the sport as far ahead as possible. Because, like, let's be honest, I'm working on this thing for I'm going to be working on this for like 15 months.
Right.
And, the last ADCC, I essentially made nothing. And I don't care. I don't do it for money. I just do it for the passion. So, and I think that's what you see when I put on these events. Like, for me, like, for example, I got a bigger budget this year. We're going to sell a lot more tickets. The arena's massive. But you're going to see that when you go to the show. Like, you're going to see it way ramped up compared to 2019.